TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the channel. It's my pleasure to introduce to you. He's been on the channel a few times with us, hanging out with us all the way from the United States of America. Bob, how are you, brother?
I'm good. How are you? I'm getting a bad feedback here.
Okay. I'm sounding good and you're sounding fine, so that's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel. Bob is the author of this outstanding book that the channel has had an association with. But more importantly, Bob, before we get our guest back on to the stream, you're looking fine and fantastic and healthy, brother.
Thank you. We're getting a real bad stream of your audio back and forth. I can't hear it.
I can't control that, mate. I'm sounding. You sure it's not you? Do you want to jump out and jump back in, Bob?
I think I will. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do that.
All right. Greg Roberts tune. How's my audio sounding, brother? You're there fantastically live. No probs in Manchester. Evening. How's my audio going? Please, somebody tell me. Somebody tell me live. Fine. Okay, that's brilliant. Fantastic. So hopefully Bob's got his audio fixed. Bob, how's it going?
That's brilliant. I'm still getting feedback. It's really weird. It's never happened before.
Okay, so Bob tells me, ladies and gentlemen, that he's got some feedback issues. I've got Greg Roberts tune in the live chat saying that there's no problems with my audio live, so I don't know what the issue is, Bob. I can't control that. Sorry. Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Let's get Dave on the show here. Dave Specter, who's 35 years plus of Chicago blues.
Hey, Dave.
I'm gonna let you take it away. I'm gonna come back in. So
awesome. Hey, Dave. How are you?
Hey, Andrew. I'm good, and I hear you fine, loud and clear.
Fantastic. Good to see you, Dave. We'll let Bob go and sort out his audio issues. So Dave, we were talking a little bit backstage. You've got some gigs, a major gig coming up in Chicago. Do you want to tell the folks a little bit about who you are, where you come from? You know, you've been playing this authentic blues music now, I understand, for 30 years. So, you know, that's a big chunk of your life, Dave.
Yeah, actually almost 40. I started in 1985, and I signed to Delmark Records in 1990, 33 years ago, and they just put out a 2 LP and 2 CD compilation of various recordings I've done over the years on Delmark. But I grew up in Chicago, raised in a very musical family, and got turned on to blues by my older brother, who used to go see Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and Coco Taylor and Junior Wells. And I snuck into my first blues gigs with a fake ID when I was 18 and saw Junior Wells and Albert King, and went to college for a few years. But that's when I started playing guitar, when I was about 18. And I moved back to Chicago and just kind of immersed myself in the blues scene and never looked back. So I played as a sideman for about 5 years. I was in Sun Seal's band for 2 years. I toured with Sam Lay and Hubert Sumlin when I was 22. And just
I knew that would put Andrew back on his back.
Yeah, but like many American blues artists, even though I grew up in the city of Chicago, I really, I heard some country blues. My dad would listen to a folk music radio show called the Midnight Special, and they would play Big Bill Broonzy and Leadbelly. But I first heard a lot of blues through bands in England covering blues, mostly the Stones, who I love.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
and I got turned on to Fleetwood Mac and Peter Green really through kind of my mentor Steve Freund, who's a great blues guitar player originally from New York, who lives out on the West Coast now. And Steve turned me on to Peter Green, and who I've always loved. And so my big gig this Friday, it's the Chicago Blues Festival kicks off actually on Thursday. It's the biggest free blues festival in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm playing a set Friday with my label mates on Delmark.
Brilliant. Can I ask you a question? Mike Bloomfield, left his family, went to Chicago, hung out with all these black guys that you spoke about, wanted to immerse himself with the authentic Chicago blues guys. How important was he as a guitar player and a musician for second generation guys like yourself coming through, Dave?
Yeah, he was very important, and we actually have a lot in common. He actually grew up in the Chicago suburbs, and one of the things we have in common is that he befriended Bob Kester, who owned Delmark Records and who owned the Jazz Record Mart, which was kind of a mecca, one of the greatest jazz and blues record stores ever.
Wow.
That the owner of Delmark owned. And Bloomfield used to hang out there because Big Joe Williams lived in the basement of the store. And Mike wrote a pretty famous and very rare book that you might be able to find online for maybe, $500 or something called Me and Big Joe, where he tells stories about living and hanging and playing with Joe Williams. Bloomfield also recorded on Delmark on a Sleepy John Estes record.
Yeah.
People used to tell me I sounded like him. People used to tell me I looked like him. I used to have big, puffy hair, and so he, guys like him and Butterfield, they were really some of the first white guys to start playing this kind of music. So they kind of set the groundwork for people like me.
Yeah. That documentary film that came out a couple of years ago, Bob and Dave, by on Paul Butterfield, and plots his history and gives you where he came from. Great indicator of that sound and that scene back, in the late 60s, when a lot of focus, Bob, clearly and obviously was on the English guys, like Dave was saying, the Rolling Stones coming through and Clapton and all that. But, at the same time, there were, some American cats doing it as well.
Yeah, Andrew, I also have a podcast. I interview a lot of artists, and I interviewed Elvin Bishop for my podcast, and I've known Elvin for quite a while. And he was in the original Butterfield Blues Band before Bloomfield joined the band. And he told me the story. Elvin's from Oklahoma, and he got a scholarship to come to Chicago to study at the University of Chicago, which is one of the great universities in the world. So Elvin obviously was a brilliant guy. But he told me the first day he got there, he met Paul Butterfield on a stairwell, and Butterfield was blowing harmonica, and they just hit it off immediately.
Cool.
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible. Folks, if you're watching on a replay and you've just heard Dave talk about his podcast, we'll be attaching all those links, social media links, to the description here on this video if you want to go and check out Dave's social media links and this podcast. I definitely will be too, so we'll be checking out what Dave's been doing over there as well.
Thank you.
Like I said earlier in the green room, Dave was very instrumental in helping us get our event at Space in Evanston, and Dave played with our guys, and we did some Peter Green, Danny Kerwin stuff. So thanks again for that, Dave. Hopefully we can get something this fall, and we definitely have to get a date for Max's too, Dave.
Yeah, I think you'll be much more successful getting work for the band if you don't rely on me as your booking agent.
Understood.
Can I ask you some guitar questions, Dave? Obviously on this channel here we love talking blues. You know, and that whole history of this great form of music, that we love. But also the gear that goes into making this music's really, really important too for us. So, are you a Fender or a Gibson guy? Do you have a preference? What's the brand that you go to? And tell us a little bit about that, please, Dave.
Well, I started out as a Strat player, and but I always had a Strat tone that was a little on the darker side. Not the bright trebly, more traditional. I liked a fatter Strat sound.
Sure.
I played Strats for a long time. I mentioned my mentor Steve Freund earlier, and Steve, and going back to Otis Rush and Magic Sam, all played Epiphone Rivieras with mini humbuckers. Yeah. And I got one of those probably in the late 80s, early 90s. I played that for a while, loved it, still have a few of those. I switched, I got a 1955 ES-175 that I used on a couple tracks on my first album. So my first album, which was recorded in 1990, I play a Strat and a 175. I've switched around through the years, and I got turned on to Fender Jazzmasters about 15 years ago. And what happened was I was playing a lot of semi-hollow body Gibsons and Epiphones, and I kind of wanted to go back to the Fender sound. And I pick up a Strat, and it felt like a toy. It felt so small. And one of the things I love about the Jazzmasters is that they're bigger guitars, and I'm 6'4". I'm a big guy. So the Jazzmaster always felt really comfortable. I love the bigger whammy bar. I love the fatter sounding pickups. So I've been playing Jazzmasters for quite a while. I also use a Gibson model that's probably not that well known, but it's a great guitar. It's an ES-137 Custom. It's semi-hollow body with an ebony neck, bound headstock, and it's got the Veritone like the 345. So if you remember the ES-135s, which were kind of common, nice semi-hollow body guitars, then they came out with the 137. The 137 Custom's kind of their most deluxe model. Mm-hmm. But I love guitars and have a wide variety from Gibson Hummingbirds to 345s to Strats to lots of Jazzmasters, National Steel guitars.
Oh, fantastic!
Do I see a Firebird behind you?
Yeah, that's a Firebird. Yeah, I've got Strats as well, and Gibsons and Curtis. Good to see you, brother. Thank you for jumping on. And we've spoken about this before. I gravitate naturally to a Strat, Dave, myself personally, but all the great records that I love are all Les Pauls, all Gibson, all Gibson albums. So
yeah, I mean, some of my favorite Strat players are Magic Sam. If you listen to like some of those live Magic Sam recordings, including the double live album on Delmark, which is an absolutely horrible recording because it was recorded with somebody's tape recorder, but the music is mind blowing, and he gets one of the best Strat sounds I've ever heard. I was a big fan of Jimmy Vaughan, still am. I love his Strat tone. But for me, one of the greatest combos ever is a Strat through a super reverb.
And you still use it? Do you use a super reverb yourself?
I still have a couple supers. Yeah, there's a company actually in the Chicago area called Victoria. I don't know if you've heard of Victoria Amps, but
yeah.
The owner's name is Mark Baer, and he started out making replicas of Fender Tweed amps, and gave me a Tweed Bassman probably 20 years ago. And I used to use a Tweed Bassman with a reverb tank. Now he started modernizing his amp. So I have a Victoria now with reverb and tremolo that I use quite a bit. Beautiful. But I also have a couple supers. I have a Vibrolux, I have a Deluxe, I have a Princeton. Fender tube, blackface tube amps especially are my favorites.
You can't go wrong, Curtis. You can't go wrong with a nice Fender amp, can you?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Sure can.
Okay. Well, I had a lot of Fender amps too, Dave. I had a 112 Deluxe, I think 1964. 63. I used to have concert amps, the 410 round concerts, which were fantastic. I had a couple of those. I had a few of those sort of things. I used to buy them and sell them, and then got into other stuff too, Marshalls and all that other crazy stuff. But I loved the early Fenders that I had. Those were off. In fact, that 112 Deluxe was just an incredible amp. I absolutely loved that thing. The little brown, Deluxe. It wasn't a reverb. I don't believe it was, but just a fantastic little amp. I remember Dickie Betts and the Allman Brothers. He recorded the entire Brothers and Sisters album with that little Deluxe, with that little 112 amp. He loved those. But I also loved. I had a lot of Strats too, 50 Strats, and I loved the sound of those through any of those amps. I've only got the one Strat now. My favorite was the 57 Strat that I had, which was really cool.
We've got Greg Roberts in the chat talking about how the Brits nicked it all in relation to the music. I hope he's only talking about the music.
Well, they did own us at one point, didn't they?
Yeah.
They kind of own my country because today is the King's birthday. It's a public holiday here in New Zealand. So, yeah. So King Charles got coronated a couple of weeks ago. So now it's officially, and all my life it was always the Queen's birthday weekend. So yeah. We still maintain those connections, Dave, to the English crown.
Yeah.
So someone's got to do it.
Yeah, it's a good thing we're free now, because they sure as hell don't know how to cook.
Yeah. I'm interested in this question that I like to ask guitar players, Dave. You've got your favorite amps set up, your backline. It's pretty easy for artists now to travel with guitars. So you've got your favorite guitar, but traveling the States or going over to Europe with your favorite amp or amps is always a difficulty, especially since this thing that happened about 3 years ago when they were interested in maintaining a small amount of luggage and moving cargo. Is that an issue for you when you have to go to Europe or fly over to another coast and you've got your favorite amp that you can't take? Are you comfortable with just flying in, playing on a rig that the promoters set up there for you?
Well, I'll tell you something that you might not believe, but it's true. I've been playing overseas since 1989 and have played in 19 countries and have never once traveled with an amplifier.
Wow.
I always just rely on what the promoters and what the bands I'm playing with provide me.
So look, I have to jump in here and say something. That's a real blues man's ethic. You've got a lot of these rock and roll kind of modern prima donnas, Bob and Curtis, out there who are quite adamant that they'll only play through a Marshall, etc. Or this brand of amp, but you're quite you're quite comfortable, Dave. You'll go and play through and adjust whatever the amp is during sound to try and get as close to the tone that you want.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that Fender amps are pretty universal, so to speak. So you can't always get a super, but you usually can get a twin or a deluxe. So I've played through some really, I won't swear, some really lousy Fenders over the years. But I've also played, I had an agent in Germany that booked a lot of tours for me, and he almost always had a great sounding super reverb. I remember playing in Switzerland once, and I requested a super reverb, and they gave me a Roland Jazz Chorus. That
Wow.
was a really bad experience.
So I've got to ask this question, Dave. Have you ever played through a blues junior, a mic'd blues junior at a gig?
I have, yeah, a couple times. I like them, but I don't think they have tube reverb, and I'm a big reverb guy.
Okay.
And the reverb on those amps, the blues, was the blues junior the small one, or the 410 or 212?
No, the small one. The small one.
Yeah,
yeah.
those, no, I'm sorry. I've never played a blues junior. I'm thinking of the blues DeVilles. Sorry.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the blues juniors, you know, unless it was up on a table and mic'd, it wouldn't be loud enough.
Okay.
But I've heard those things sound great. Those are great little amps.
We've got a question from Jonas, who's a friend of our channel. He's asking, have you ever played in Sweden?
Yeah, I have. I played in Sweden once. It was, I think, 2012 or 2014. I played near the North Pole. They told me we could drive up to the North Pole. We were that far north.
Wow.
I played in two towns called Umeå, Umea, and Luleå, Lulea. And I know we flew in and out of Stockholm. Beautiful, beautiful. Some of the cleanest air I've ever experienced.
Interesting.
Hey, Dave, have you talked about, since I'm joining late, your upcoming show in Chicago at the Millennium?
Yes.
You guys have already talked about that? Okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
I'm going to come out on Friday and see you guys.
All right.
With the jam. So what guitars are you going to be playing there?
I'm bringing my gold 65 reissue Jazzmaster, and I'm probably bringing either one of my Gibson 137s or an Epiphone Riviera. Okay. I'm leaning towards a Riviera with mini humbuckers just because it's a Delmark tribute, and Otis Rush and Magic Sam and Steve Freund all played Rivieras. So probably an Epiphone, maybe a Gibson. I'll have two guitars.
Okay. Are you going to have they have a back line of what you want, or are you going to bring your own amps?
I think they're going to have a super for me. No, they provide everything.
That should be fun. Hopefully it'll be a nice day. I think it's supposed to be maybe 80 degrees or something. That's going to be a lot of fun.
It's weird playing during the day. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I know. It is. It is
I was thinking that too, Dave.
I know.
It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right?
Yeah, you know, it's like going to festivals. I prefer to hear blues and jazz, which are my two favorite kinds of music, in dark clubs.
Sure.
But, you know, festivals are a big part of the way we make a living and the way this music is presented. So I remember playing the San Francisco Blues Fest once. Hubert Sumlin was headlining it. And I played with Steve Freund, and I think we went on at like 1 PM in California. And there was just this intense, bright sunshine. And, I mean, a beautiful setting, but it's hard to get the feeling for the music with that kind of atmosphere from my perspective.
I imagine you guys had no control over that. It's just the scheduling, whatever they decided to do.
Well, Curtis, you know, I used to be able to control the weather, but my superpowers have diminished.
No, not the weather. I mean, the scheduling of when you guys were going to go on the Delmark show instead of having that in the evening.
Yeah, that's not up to us.
Yeah. I guess that's up to Mike Freeman and those guys.
Yeah. I'll have a talk with them, Dave.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's interesting how music festivals are still a big part of continuing this music live. Is still an event in America. You know, you've got you know, I'm sorry to throw this in here, but you know, you've got bluegrass festivals. You just had the Dell Fest a couple of days ago, and you know, Americans are just crazy and hungry for live music, guys. You know, they just love going to these big events and appreciating music in a live context. It's remarkable because we don't have that situation here in this country. Yeah,
I mean, here in Chicago, we had the Gospel Festival, the Chicago Gospel Festival this weekend. Last weekend, we had the Sueños Latin Music Festival, and these are huge festivals
Wow.
in giant lakefront parks with tens of thousands of people. And yeah, it's amazing. There's incredible amounts of live music here in the States. And it's really good that it's back because it was shut down like everything else for a couple of years during COVID.
Well, and this blues festival is huge. This is a 3-day event in
4 days.
Chicago. So
4
there's
days.
going to be many tens of thousands of people.
Really? That much, Curtis? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. These are huge festivals they have here in Chicago.
Yeah, the first time I played the Chicago Blues Festival was actually in a bigger park. It was in Grant Park, famous for the 1968 riots during the Democratic National Convention. Sorry, I wasn't supposed to talk politics, but but I remember the first time I played there, I think it was 87 or 88 with Sun Seals. I was his rhythm guitar player. Just on that stage alone, they estimated there were over 60,000 people watching.
Wow.
Yeah. So like I said, it's the Chicago Blues Fest has been the biggest free blues festival in the world for quite a while, probably since, the 70s.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So how do people pay? So you've answered the question. So it's a free concert and sponsorship and gear companies and the local, I suppose, government will be paying for this fest.
Exactly. Yeah, the city budget, has money in it for neighborhood festivals, and there's a Department of Cultural Affairs in Chicago that has been great and sponsors, not only music festivals but art festivals, and they're United Airlines used to be a big sponsor of the Chicago Blues Fest, and they do a pretty good job of covering the costs and paying the artists pretty well.
Brilliant. Can you answer this question for us, Dave? So, what are you currently listening to, as far as music goes? Is that something you want to share with us? Is there a favorite artist or album you're listening to?
Well, my older sister just told me she's going to be going to the Village Vanguard in New York for the first time. So I was just listening to a McCoy Tyner record recorded at the Vanguard, where he plays all Coltrane songs. What else I've been listening to? A friend just made me a beautiful CD of recordings that Les Paul and Chet Atkins did together. That's amazing for any guitar player to listen to. It'll make you want to give up guitar for the rest of your life and never play it. But
of course, you've been listening to Fleetwood Mac in Chicago.
I haven't, Bob. Not since the show we did.
No.
I've listened to the Fleetwood Mac, quite a bit over the years. But what else have I been listening to? Los Lobos are one of my favorite bands in the world, and they just put out, and they're actually playing the Chicago Blues Festival. They're going to be doing a blues set on Sunday night.
Yeah, they're headlining Sunday night, I think.
Yeah, awesome. So a friend of mine took me out sailing yesterday. So we listened to Los Lobos' version of Sail on Sailor, which was written by Brian Wilson, that David Hidalgo just sings incredibly well. And I was listening to Otis Rush Morning in the Morning recently, which I think is one of his best albums, recorded at Muscle Shoals.
Do you want to tell us how you go about your songwriting process? Do your songs begin with a melody, with a guitar hook, with a chord progression, or do you begin your songs with lyrics, words, and ideas first?
I've written a lot of them of original music, and I would say at this point in my career, 90% of it are all instrumentals. I have 2 albums out of all instrumentals, and most of my albums feature 3 or 4 instrumentals. So writing instrumental music usually starts with a melody or a groove. Okay. Blues is dominated by shuffles and slow blues.
Yep.
So sometimes I'll think of a different groove, maybe a rumba or maybe a funk groove or maybe a Latin groove that still is a blues, but, just to mix it up. Or I'll try to write a shuffle that's got, like an original theme, an original idea to it. And I'm a big believer in melody. I think that might come from my years of listening to jazz.
Okay.
I listen to very bluesy jazz. People like Kenny Burrell and Jimmy Smith and Dexter Gordon and Horace Silver, where, melodic phrasing is such an important part of the music, and it's played very soulfully. And I want that to come through in my blues playing. So, yeah, melody first, groove is important. Chord progressions, I do like to mix it up. So I've written some tunes that definitely are outside of the 1-4-5 realm of blues.
Awesome. I've got one more question, and then there's a couple of other questions in the chat that I'm going to fire through to you. So Bob will know this, being a disciplined writer. He'll get up in the morning and he'll give himself 6 hours to write. And writers generally tend to do that. So as a musician, are you disciplined like that? Do you say that today is a day where I'm going to write some music and see what comes out and record just whatever I'm doing? Or are you a guy that just has to wait until, the muse inspires you?
Good question. Usually what inspires me to write, and usually what inspires me to practice a lot, because I honestly don't practice a lot. I play a lot of shows. I mean, I'm not playing as many now, but in my busier days as a blues musician, I was working 15 shows a month. So I was playing a lot. And, when I wasn't playing, I was taking a break from it. But what inspires me to write and what inspires me to practice is either mostly a recording session. If I've got a session coming up, if I've got an album coming up, I'm going to want to write music for it. And obviously practice for it. I'm doing the Chicago Blues Fest with a band, honestly, that I've never played with before. It's like, quote unquote, all stars. It's basically just like a jam session with a lot of people, all kind of speaking the same language in different ways. So I've been practicing a lot of tunes that I normally wouldn't play with my own band.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for answering that, because it's always an intriguing question. Jonas, our good friend's got a question here who wants to know your favourite Peter Green song. He's a Fleetwood Mac nut, so it's obvious he's going to ask that question.
I'm not good at picking a single favorite of anything. I always have to have at least a few. But some of my favorite Peter Green is on Mr. Wonderful. I love, If You Be My Baby, Rollin' Man. It sounds like it was recorded live in a club with the horn section and with Christine McVie on piano. And that's, to me, like some of the purest, blues that he played. And I love some of the classics like Albatross and Oh Well. And I love his version of Homework. I mean, Otis Rush is one of my heroes. And I love the Otis version of Homework, but Peter Green's version that they recorded in Chicago is probably my second favorite version of Homework.
That was a fun one to play when we did the show, Homework. You did really well on that. I liked the singing and everything. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's a cool tune. And listen to the original Otis Rush single. I believe it was on Peacock Records. Really cool.
Hey, Dave, do you know what you're going to be playing down there at the show? Do you want to tell anybody, or you guys still haven't figured out what songs you're going to do? Do you have anything that you're looking forward to doing as a guitar player?
We had 2 rehearsals. I'm doing one of my original tunes called Blues from the Inside Out.
That's a great song.
I'm doing an instrumental that Otis Rush popularized along with Earl Hooker. I Wonder Why. Mm-hmm. That is also titled on some Otis Rush records, Will My Woman Be Home Tonight, which he recorded on the Delmark Live in Japan album which was one of the first blues records that I learned how to play by playing along with records and watching people play. And the Otis Rush Live in Japan on Delmark was a really important record for me. It had Jimmy Johnson on rhythm guitar, who became a friend and colleague and mentor to me. We played together for years. And, one of the things that I learned early on is that you have to be a good rhythm guitar player first,
Sure.
So I would listen to rhythm guitar players like Jimmy, and I would listen to the rhythm guitar players on other Otis Rush records and on Albert King records, and, just try to complement the lead guitar player, or complement anyone else who is soloing, or anyone else who is singing. So when I teach, which I do a lot, I always stress, get your rhythm chops together first. I played with Sun Seals for almost 2 years, and he didn't give me a solo the first year, but I was okay with that. I mean, it was just, it's an art playing rhythm guitar well. So back to that record with Jimmy Johnson backing Otis Rush, that's why I bring it up.
Yeah, I remember when I started, I was always listening to our early Stones records way back in the day, and always kind of doing the rhythm parts. Keith Richards, great rhythm stuff behind. I always that's what I did most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, Keith was my first guitar hero, and this is the ultimate rhythm guitar player and
Right.
the ultimate riff master for coming up with riffs. So hail to Keith.
100%. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you should talk about these English guys in relation to, obviously the musical techniques that we develop ourselves when we begin and learn this instrument. But I agree with you. I'm a big Keith Richards nut too, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of a secret. I never understood open G tuning until recently, and I grabbed a Telecaster, I whipped that bottom E string off, tuned it to open G, and when I played some of those classic Rolling Stones songs, guys, it wasn't until, and like for example, playing Brown Sugar in standard is nowhere near nowhere near. You don't get that timing that's crucial that you get when you're playing an open G, Dave, because you can actually hang back a little bit, as you would probably know when you play in open tunings. You can hang back that beat a little bit because, you've got that open tuning. You're just using that one finger to get the chord. It was like a revelation, and no wonder Keith Richards fell in love with that technique.
Right. And you know who really turned him on to that tuning?
In his book, he says Ry Cooder.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Which kind of blew me away. And then I went and did a bit of investigations after that, after his biography, and the Cooder caster and Ry Cooder, and I just listened to all this music that I hadn't heard for ever with Ry Cooder. It's just, the guy's phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. Probably, Mick Taylor's one of my favorite slide guitar players, but I think Ry Cooder is my favorite slide guitar player.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, Mick Taylor is one of my favorites too.
Oh, yeah.
Exile on Main Street, just absolutely, he's all over that. It's just phenomenal.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's look. We all know Bob's Desert Island record is Then Play On, but Exile on Main Street might be mine. I think it's just phenomenal. Curtis and Dave, have you guys seen Mick Taylor play live? Have you had the opportunity to see him?
Yes.
Go ahead, Curtis.
Oh, well, because we made a guitar for him when I worked at Hamer, and took it down Chicago. I'm trying to remember what club he was playing, and this must have been around, let's see, 81, something like that, 1981. Made a guitar for him and just sat and visited with him for a couple hours. And I've said this before, when I was sitting there listening to him, and it just hit me. I said, wait a minute, this is the guy. This is Mick Taylor. This is the guy who played Blues Breakers and was the Stones, and that I had all these albums. But when you work for a company, I was just thinking of working on guitars, then bringing them to somebody. But then it just hit me, whoa, this is the guy right here who was doing that. One of my favorite guitar players. And I didn't see him play with the Stones, but just solo like that, up close and personal. Nicest guy. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Before you go, Dave, did you saw Mick Taylor play too?
Yeah, I was on a festival with him in Germany. I think it was 1998 or 99. And we actually stayed in the same hotel, so I got to hang with him and talk with him. And I saw a Blues Breakers reunion at the Park West when I was, I think, in high school with John McVie and Mick Taylor, and of course Mayall and
Colin Allen was the drummer.
Might have been Ainsley Dunbar, but I don't remember the drummer. But I did want to mention, back to Ry Cooder and the Stones, Sister Morphine, of course. The features, stunning slide playing on Sticky Fingers by Ry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a tune, I'm at that age now. I just turned 60. So
you're a youngster.
Yeah,
Good.
There's a tune that Ry played with Mick. I think it's on remember the movie Performance?
Yes.
Yeah, it's on that soundtrack. It's a killer track, and it's a great tune, and it's Ry Cooder playing an open G like Keith wishes he could. I mean, Keith was amazing, but Ry did it better, I gotta say.
And mandolin on Country Honk on Let It Bleed as well, so he's on there as well. And
Yeah.
I understand, and I can't confirm this, but Ry Cooder was even considered as a replacement for Brian Jones at one point as well too.
Yeah, I believe it. Unfortunately, I don't think Ry has many kind things to say about the Stones. Something along the line of like blood-sucking leeches.
Yeah.
Something nice like that, yeah.
That's exactly. Yeah.
Leaving out the swear words, right, Dave?
Yeah. I mean, Ry's kind of a curmudgeon-y old dude, but he, I don't think he liked the way things went with his relationship with them.
No, he didn't. And one other, look, again, this is one other interesting fact that I didn't know at the time, and I don't know why I didn't, but Ry Cooder was responsible for showing that Ralph Macchio how to play that Telecaster on the Crossroads film that came out to try and bring some authenticity, because guys like us will be sitting there watching it, and if he's playing the 4 chord where the 2 chord should be or something, you'd sit there and this is crap. So at least he got that down well too, and they got an authentic musician to teach him.
Yeah, and most of the playing in that movie and on the soundtrack was Ry.
Oh.
Yeah, people thought it was Steve Vai and everything. But...
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Steve Vai, they have like a guitar battle in it.
Right.
But the blues stuff on it was all Ry Cooder.
Right.
Oh, I have to go and check that out again. I forgot that, or I didn't know that. Thank you.
For those of you on social media, Ry's got a pretty entertaining Instagram page, or he often posts video clips of him playing various bizarre stringed instruments from his collection.
I'm gonna look
cool.
for
I
it
didn't
right
know
now.
that. Well, I know Dave's got a hard stop here at 6 o'clock, so appreciate you
Dave,
taking the time, Dave.
Dave, you go when you have to go. We're going to hang out here and have a bit of a chat when you leave. It's been a pleasure having you on, and like I was saying to you guys in the green room, organising a time for us to get together and hang out, and Bob especially. for introducing you to us and to our channel and getting you on in the first place. Thank you, Bob. It's always a pleasure, and we accept your generosity. And Dave, an authentic Chicago blues man, hanging out with a guy from New Zealand, and people that watch our channel. It's inspiring and humbling. Just to share some of your experiences on where you've come from and gear. We love it. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
We'll have to have Dave back when Jeff's on, because Dave's quite a photographer too.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a new hobby for me, but thanks for having me. My website is Dave Specter with an E, no relation to Phil.com. And I have a cool podcast, as we talked about earlier. It's called Blues from the Inside Out, just bluesfromtheinsideout.com. I think I have about 35 episodes. Interviews with everyone from Elvin Bishop to Jimmy Vaughn to Billy Boy Arnold to Sam Lay. It's just like us, just talking, person to person, nothing too formal, talking gear, talking music.
Well, what I'll do is I'll make sure I get those links correctly off Bob. And as I said earlier, guys, if you're watching on a replay and you want to go and check out Dave's social medias, we encourage everybody to do that when we have guests on, to go and support them and touch base and go and check out those podcasts, because they sound interesting. Thank you, Dave. I'll make sure I attach that, and we'll go nuts and share this video link and to some of our friends as well.
I gotta say one thing before you go, Dave. To anyone else who's watching this or has not seen Dave, if you get a chance, he's playing a number of shows coming up now. If you're down at Blues Fest, you've got to come check out his show, because Dave is the real deal. He's authentic Chicago blues that goes way back, and you will not be disappointed.
Thank you, Curtis. I'll send you a check for that. But I got
Thank you, Curtis.
I'll see you on Friday, by the way. I'll stop by.
And Dave, we'll talk. We'll get a date with Max's later this month.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Andrew, great to be with you. Great to meet you.
Thank you. Come back.
So long.
What a nice guy. Thank you, Bob and Curtis, for bringing him on. I was checking him out. I came across him a couple of years ago, just on social media. But when you said, initially when we were talking that, this guy really, really well, and that you're great mates with him, and it's like,
He was very helpful. Actually, the back line that he used at our event, he didn't use his band. He used Curtis and our drummer, and Rob Herman as his back line for the event that we did with him at Space.
So did you get my point, though, that I was making, that, we often see on YouTube where some performers and artists are quite pedantic with their backline, Curtis, and that's fine if you're in a position where you're only going to play a JCM 800, and if there's not one there, you're not going to go on, and there has to be 4 of them. But I really love the fact, and we see it. Joe Bonamassa does it. He'll just turn up with an amp, a guitar and a lead. Clapton did it, and just plug in. Ronnie Wood, I love the fact that there's blues guys out there just doing that still, Curtis.
Right. Except I've seen recently, Joe's on tour, and he brings all this stuff, but he can afford it. He's got,
right.
It's like a big deal, big tour, but he'll bring all his guitars and a bunch of amps because he wants to get exactly the sound that, that he wants, which is fine. But he could show up anywhere. Most of these guys, Dave, any of them, they can show up anywhere and just play through anything, and it's going to be great. They're going to sound fantastic.
That's on one of the Peter Green sites too that I think you saw, Andrew. I mean, the Gary Moore Blues for Greenie concert, he's playing, the Les Paul that everybody talks about. He doesn't sound anything like Peter Green.
Right. But these guys can show up, Dave's a professional. He's been doing this forever. He could just, nothing would surprise him. He could just show up and plug through anything and play through anything. You could just hand him a guitar and it's going to be great. He's just a super pro. That's why I was encouraging anyone who hasn't seen the guy, go down, and when he's got a website and he lists all his shows.
It's going to take
they
you 3 hours to get down there, Curtis.
well, that's the only problem. That's why I'm going to take the train down on Friday. That's the only way to do it. Take
So
the train downtown.
How many people do you think will be at that gig, that Friday afternoon gig?
Oh,
Like,
God.
There's no way of knowing. It's huge.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah, tens of. It's a huge, huge park, and they have 3 stages, and it goes on all day. What Dave was talking about, he's not used to playing. It's kind of weird during the day because it starts at like
noon, I think.
I think it starts at noon on a couple of the stages, and then the huge stage where Dave's going to be playing. I think they start at 2:30, 2 o'clock or 2:30, and and imagine what it's going to be like on Saturday or Sunday. It's a giant festival.
Yeah, we were going to go, but because of certain things, we can't get away. Like you said, it takes forever to get down there.
There's no way if Peggy and I were driving down, there's just no way because the construction on the highways. So I just take a train down for an hour and then take an Uber over there, and that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
You don't have to. I don't know how we'll get out of there. Get an Uber getting out of there. It's going to be impossible. But the train is really the only way to do it to get downtown. I was talking to Michael Freeman about that. Because he's got to be there every day, all day. He's got to stroll around because he's part of the committee. And I said, "What do you do, Michael? You just going to stay downtown?" He says, "No, I'll take the train down from where he lives out in Barrington. Same thing. That's the easy way to do it. It's So did we lose Andrew? There he is.
Yeah, he's got to come back. I don't since I know Andrew's seen this. I don't know if you saw this, but talking about Fleetwood Mac, this is the Buddy Guy Legends magazine.
Oh yeah, that's great. You were going to bring me one at the book signing, but you refused to show up at the book signing.
Yeah. By the way, with that, Andrew, since I had a relapse a little the other week when we had a book signing at Barnes and Noble, so Jeff said that Curtis is just going to go and pretend he's me.
Yeah, I filled in. I was Bob.
Mate, he's not as handsome as you, Bob.
and I had shaved before, so I didn't have the beard. I didn't look,
Curtis, I'm glad you're on. Follow you on Facebook. You've had a hell of a time in Europe, brother.
Yeah, we did. My wife and I, now that we're retired, we can spend some time actually traveling, which, as Bob would know, when you're working full time forever, you cannot get away to do things like that. I always say, we were lucky if we could get away just for a weekend, to go up to Wisconsin or something, because you're always busy and the boss is always bothering you. You cannot get away. So this is something we want to do, and we want to do more. So we were over for 2 weeks. We flew into Rome and then went up to Florence for a few days. Then we spent a better part of a week in Chianti region in Tuscany, which was just incredible. In a 1,000-year-old farmhouse that they make wine, olive oil.
And it's just that Curtis has wanted to do forever.
Yeah, just one of the most beautiful areas. Then we went up to Venice, and we're up there, and it was just really a wonderful time. And then my wife and I are talking. We want to plan next year. We want to go over to England and Ireland and areas over there because my wife's family was from Ireland. So do something like that, and then every year we're going to do something for a couple of weeks. We had so much fun though. It was just beautiful, and it was a great time to go because the weather was beautiful. There weren't quite the hordes of crowds that there are during the summer.
And obviously a bit of Jeff Loventhal's photography techniques have rubbed off on you because your photos were pretty good.
Hey, it's so easy with your phone nowadays.
Oh, you just
the quality, it's just easy to take a photograph.
And speaking of Jeff, he sends his regrets, but I can tell you that Jeff has given a check mark to Dave Specter's photography. He's been taking, if you go on Facebook and you see Dave Specter, he's got some unbelievable photos of bald eagles.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It's a great hobby. He's doing really well. I think he's taking some beautiful pictures. So it's
Hey, he's got a check mark by the legendary Lowenthal, so he's got to have something, right?
Right.
I'm going to see if I can
somebody
find...
asked how the book's doing. The book is, I can say, the book, we've had a talk with our publisher a few weeks back, and I had made mention to the publisher that we had supplied a couple of book reviews prior to the book coming out, like from Michael Freeman and people who have seen pictures before. And where are those reviews? They're not in the dust jacket. And he said, oh, that'll be on the second pressing. So they're talking about a second edition already.
Oh, wow.
That's fantastic.
So it's got to be doing something. And I posted on a couple of the Peter Green sites. I don't know if you saw it, Andrew. We got a really nice review from Americana News.
Yeah.
Just a real glowing review. Matter of fact, Mike Vernon even made a shout out saying what a nice review it was.
I saw that. That's great. Yep.
Yeah. So it's surprisingly weird. I mean, just like with you with your show, Andrew, Jeff and I have heard from people from Italy, from Switzerland, from Australia, New Zealand. I mean, really all over the world. It's quite amazing.
Fantastic.
And there's still such interest in something that's, as Jeff says, that's 54 years old.
And that was one thing I wanted to say. We're sorry you weren't at the book signing that day, Bob, and I was concerned, well, is Jeff going to be able to hold down the fort here for a 4-hour show? But he was just animated. He had a great time. He was telling all his stories. It was fantastic.
He was probably drinking.
He was, and I think I posted a picture. I told Bob about it and Jeff that, I knew my dad had, was a fan of Saul Bellow and had some of the books up at my place in Wisconsin. And I said, I'm pretty sure he has those. I don't remember if there's a dust jacket or not. So I was just up there the past few days, and I go to the little bookshelf and pull out the book. I turn it, the back cover. There's Jeff's photograph, and it's credited above the photograph, Jeff Lowenthal, 1964. There it is. I couldn't believe I had that. I wouldn't have known about that had I not seen that other article in that Chicago magazine about
New City.
Yeah, New City. And I said, gee, this looks familiar, but there it is. And there's Jeff Lowenthal's. Now that's crazy because, after all these years, and here I know Jeff now, but I didn't for years. My dad had these books. He would have loved Jeff because he was, my dad was a huge jazz fan. Same, just like Jeff, all that type of music. So anyway, yeah. Jeff had a lot of fun. He had a great time.
That's good. So, that's the first time, Andrew, that, and, because Jeff and I have talked virtually every day for the last 3 years. It's the first time Jeff actually got mad at me and yelled at me. He goes, your health is more important. You're not coming. So,
yeah.
And thank you and Brad and Simon for all your shouts out on your shows. It's greatly appreciated. It's been a struggle, and I can tell you, Brad, your words do ring home and very helpful. So it's been a struggle, but come out on the other side, and really appreciate your guys' support.
No problem. It's sincere. We were just talking about it last night. He made a quick pop in on our show that we have scheduled for every Sunday here in this part of the world. He couldn't make it because he was interstate with his gig with one of the bands that he performs with. So he popped on in a couple of minutes, and I said to him, look, did he want to pop on the show today? And he said, well, no, because he has to go to work today. But again, wanted to pass on his regards. Because, he's been in your situation. So, it's kind of scary, isn't it?
Yeah, very scary. And actually, I'll quote Jeff Lowenthal in his absence. He told me, 12 doctors are asking me how did it happen. Did you get hit in the head by a 2x4? Did you fall? And neither one happened. And Jeff had the definitive answer of why I had a stroke. The book has gone to my head.
That's it.
Oh.
Brilliant.
Ah,
Oh my gosh.
ah.
That for the second edition has to be a quote on the back of the book.
Yeah, there you go.
It's definitely going to your head. Yeah.
And interesting, Andrew, when you had posted one of the videos from our event, and then you were taken down. And by the way, it's very funny what you said on your show about that Jeff and I know something about Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
When I posted it as a comment, it doesn't seem to upset anybody.
Yeah. It was pretty strange. It was bizarre. Yeah, we posted, a video with you guys talking about your book on one of the big we won't name the Peter Green Facebook group, but one of the big ones, the one that kicked me off about 7 years ago for doing something similar. And the reply back from the admin was, this is not content related to Peter Green. And I remember going, are you for real? And I shared it with Simon, the rock professor. I said, you need to check this out. And so we had a quick video talk for a couple of minutes because we just thought it was nuts. How can this book not be content related, Curtis, to Fleetwood Mac?
It doesn't make any sense, does it?
Eh?
That's crazy.
Actually, I think one of the videos that was taken down was Black Magic Woman, Curtis.
Was it really?
Yeah. And by the way,
Yep.
those videos on YouTube, I don't know if you were able to stream my channel yet, Andrew, but Black Magic Woman's number 1, number 2 is Jewel Die Judy.
What I'll do, folks, if anybody, again, is still hanging out, watching this on replay, I'll have links to Bob's channel on the description as well. Not only Dave's content and links, we'll have Bob's links as well, and we'll share Curtis. Curtis is on Facebook, so go and check out those wonderful composed photos that Curtis took when he was in Europe.
I've got a lot of photos.
See, even Holly. Look, Holly knows. It's you know.
It's crazy. I mean, why would they take it down? And then I posted the exact same thing as a comment, and it was fine.
Yeah, I just like
bizarre.
I say, it just goes to. I got to be careful how I say this because it might filter my mouth. I think some Facebook groups, Bob, Curtis, Holly, and Greg, and everyone else who's in the chat, I think some Facebook groups, and don't get me wrong, we have 4 Facebook groups attached to our channel here, and they work in conjunction really, really well. But I think a lot of Facebook groups just only ever want you to do 1 or 2 things. Just post the same boring photos that 50 people have posted last week. People just feel safe about doing that, or the same YouTube clip of Fleetwood Mac playing Black Magic Woman or Rattlesnake Shake that's been posted 5 times. And when somebody actually goes and gets some people together and write a book, God forbid, on the subject, you know. Yeah. Remember books, Curtis?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. You see where I'm going? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's just too hard. No, so we can't have that.
Now and thanks to Curtis and the crew again. I wish you could have been at our event, Andrew, because it was a lot of people, and Amy can tell you, Curtis channeled Peter Green's tone.
Oh, beautiful. Hey, well,
with the
he
help of
thought
Keith
about it.
Flynn.
He thought about it. Your Blues Breaker and that Les Paul. You gave it some thought, didn't you, Curtis?
I did. The only scary thing about that song, which I've said to Bob before, is we really never rehearsed it. You know, it was kind of a last minute thing because I was saying, you know, in fact, my wife was saying, why aren't you guys doing Black Magic Woman? And then I was like, yeah, why are we doing that, Bob? And then, well, okay, so let's try it at rehearsal. One of the last rehearsals we had down in Chicago,
Right.
I came up with an idea of how to do it, and everyone kind of looked at me like, I don't get the timing. Okay, I said, all right, forget it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it real simple. I'm going to chart this out. I'm going to bring it to our sound check at Space. Here's how we're going to do it. And I talked to, you know, the drummer, said, here's how we're going to do this, and just follow it. This is going to be real easy. So we just ran through it in like maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes at the sound check. When I was having trouble getting the amp to work properly, I couldn't get my, you know, a couple of things. I wasn't even prepared properly. So we just ran through it a little bit. And then because we were running out of time, it was getting late, said, all right, don't worry, we'll just play it. So then when at the show, it was basically just played live for the first time. And it was a little rough, you know, but okay, I knew it would work. And
It's
so
the blues.
I'm amazed that it turned out as well. And people said it was really good, or that they liked the sound of it and the tone and all that, because I think that's the least amount of rehearsal or practice we put into any of the songs we did.
Absolutely true.
It really was
One of
just,
the
yeah.
nice things that happened during the show, well, a lot of nice things, but they did a rendition of "Sunny Side of Heaven," a Danny Kerwin song,
Mhm.
Oh,
and
wow.
Curtis's neighbor and a couple other people came up to me at the event and said, "What song was that? Well, I got to buy that album." They had
Oh,
never
they
heard it before. They were blown away by it.
loved that song. Right. Absolutely. Both neighbors on both sides of our house said the same thing. They were not familiar with it. And they said, oh, I just love that song. It's so well done. So that was great to get the compliments
Were you
because,
nervous at all, Curtis? You know,
no,
because
not,
to some degree we've all played songs many times, and then when you haven't played it and you're jamming with a couple of guys, it's a little bit different than when you go up onto a stage and actually people are sitting there focusing, looking at you. It can have a different effect on you as a guitar player. How describe how your reactions to doing this impromptu thing?
no, I just wanted it to turn out okay. I wanted to make sure everyone had the right chords.
Okay.
Everyone was on the same page and we could hear everybody. Now I couldn't hear everybody. So we didn't really, you know, we didn't have headsets or anything like that. So there wasn't enough like practicing at a like dress rehearsal or, you know, that type of thing so that the sound was right, the volume was right. In fact, when we first set up that during sound check, the sound man said, well, I'm not even putting you guys through the speakers
PA.
because you're too loud. Okay, well, we'll turn down so that he could get a mix and that type of. But no, my problem was getting all my equipment working. I never even got my Vox Wah Wah to work for some reason. You know, time was running out. I
Yeah.
finally and I just gave up, so I never got to use it. And so I just plugged directly in through my tuner, so I could tune the guitar and maybe a reverb unit. That's about it. So, and I figured no one's going to know the difference. It'll be fine. I just wanted to make sure it was good for Dave, that, you know, we didn't screw up for him, you know,
Yeah.
that was it. But, you know,
You did
Curtis
that
was
classic Chicago blues thing, didn't he? You know,
exactly.
you know, you just turned up and plugged in.
absolutely.
Right.
It was no, yeah. And so I don't really worry about that. I was more concerned with the behind the scenes things. Does everyone know the song? Have you guys practiced? And, you know, were my effects going to work? And I just gave up on getting the wah-wah pedal to work. So I just said, unplug that and go straight in through everything else. And it's fine. It worked. It was okay.
Isn't it amazing when you think of these guys like Howlin' Wolf as a classic example? You know, tough band leader. You know, and wherever he went, he'd just go up to the guys, and whatever the song was, he'd just say what the key was, and there was this expectation, Curtis
Right.
and Bob, that everybody knew the chord changes.
Right.
Well, I think Dave was a little more nervous because he had never played with us, and we were his backup band. And so, in fact, he even sent me. I shouldn't say this, but I will. He even sent me a message a couple of days before the show. can you make sure everyone is solid on the changes of one of the songs, which was, I think, what song was it? I can't remember which one it was.
It was Love That Burns.
Yeah,
Oh.
that could have been that. But and he said, just make sure they all know the changes. The guy said, yeah, okay, don't worry. And then I sent a message to everybody, and everyone was like, yeah, no problem. We're professionals. And so it was fine. But I think he was concerned with, do we know everything? Because he's going to get up there and play, and are we ready to go? And I told him, we'll know the stuff. Don't worry about it. We got it. Everything's fine.
It went
Just
off
have
really
fun.
well.
Just play, Dave. Just sing and play. You're gonna enjoy it. And he was great. Dave was great. It was a pleasure to play with him. Because
Hopefully we'll have something this fall down the road. There's a couple things that I want to point out that as far as the book goes, we were just recently contacted by a freelance writer out of Rochester, New York. Did you know there's a Rochester Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
No.
It's like, what is there, 5 people in it? Anyway, apparently before COVID, they had authors come in that are also musicians, people such as Tony Levin, bass player who hasn't he played with, and have people come in and talk about their books. So we have a conference call with them coming up, and one of the first things this gentleman asked us is if we're going to go on tour, which is what Paul Hamers asked us, as you know, Curtis.
That's what Paul said. He said, you guys should go over to, he even said it to Dave, said, you guys should go over to England, because they would just eat this stuff alive. They would love it. And there's nothing like this,
So depending on how the interview goes, we might speak at the Rochester, New York Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I told Jeff I'd fly him there.
Hey, do they want to do a jam there too?
Yeah, I don't know if they have the facilities of that. That's possible. The other thing that's happening with the book is we also have an interview coming up with Goldmine magazine.
You did get that scheduled. That's fantastic. Yep. Because
and if it wasn't for Curtis,
I met him at the book
I wouldn't have known about it, because Jeff never told me.
He never told you he had the card.
So thank you, Curtis.
Well, that was fun. That was great.
Yeah, I talked to Jeff. He said, oh yeah, he gave me a card. He sent me the information. I sent him an email and got a response back really quickly.
That was really interesting, because he came up and was talking to us like he wasn't sure what was going on, and we're doing this book signing, and then he introduced himself, and we started talking, and I said, well, how did you know about the book signing? He said, actually, I didn't. I'm just in town going to Barnes and Nobles, because they're all supposed to be carrying Goldmine, and I wanted to see if they had it in stock. And of course, where we were, they did not have a copy.
Oh, really?
So he was trying to find out why they didn't have, because they were supposed to have a number of copies in stock. So it just worked out that there he was in town right then at that moment, and then came up to us and started talking and we said, this is Jeff Lowenthal, he's the photographer, and he was fascinated by this, and said,
well,
this
they're definitely going to do something, because a couple days ago he asked us for photos. So
2 minutes, guys.
Gonna...
Just give me 2 more minutes.
Sure. He's definitely going to do something, I think, Curtis. So that's great.
That's great.
Thanks for the heads up on that. This is why I need to go to those signings, and I can't get sick.
Well, it was great, because it worked out for him too, and he bought a book, and he thought this was fascinating, and he never would have gotten the chance to just sit there and talk to Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff said that there was one woman that he said that bought a book, and he said, wow, you're a Fleetwood Mac fan, you're pretty young. She goes, it's for my father.
Yes. That was funny.
So so again, thank you for that, because Jeff is 85. So
well, and I was joking with the guy. I said, okay, so here's my signed copy. I had Jeff sign my Fleetwood Mac in Chicago, or Booth Jam in Chicago, and here it is. So now what's it worth?
Oh, the album. That's right.
Because Goldmine, and it's all about records and values of albums and stories, and things like that. And I'm like, so now this is the only copy that's signed. What is this worth now? but I kept joking to Jeff because he had the album right in front of him there. Jeff, if I'm walking around and talking to people, just don't sell the record, okay? Just your book. Sell your book, but don't. If someone says, "Oh, can I buy this?" Don't say yes. It's not for sale.
Well, I have to get him to sign mine too. And of course, Jeff was like, "Well, what's your version? You have like 4 different versions of the album." So it's
Everyone.
got to go. You got to go with the original, I think. And Jeff is thinking about a second book. So jazz.
Boy, that would be great. I was talking to him about that too, and said, "Boy, Jeff, you got to do it. These
Well, those
photographs have
pictures
to be seen."
can't go to the dumpster. I mean,
Right, you've got to do this. This is just unbelievable stuff, and it's so important, and it's got to be done. And he said, "What did he say? Find me a publisher." I said, "Don't worry, Bob will take care of all that."
yeah. Well, he's not. He wasn't an easy guy to convince either about this. So, but
I know.
it's amazing that that people, I guess it's like Clapton or we're talking about Mick Taylor or any of the top tier guitarists that people still think about him in such reverence, because that's what blows Jeff's away. Is like, who's going to be interested in this? Half a century later.
He doesn't realize, there's always a new generation of people discovering this stuff. When we were coming up, we were interested in stuff, the Beatles, and before that, and early rock and roll. There's always a new generation who's discovering stuff, and so if you don't get the information out there, if you don't write the books, if you don't preserve all this information and knowledge, it just kind of dies and it's gone, and no one will know. And Jeff, you're here, you're alive, you're here. You've got all these photographs, you've got these stories and the memory. This is important, not just for you, but for 50 years from now. Someone's going to want to see this, and it's incredible.
I was just saying, Andrew, that we talked to the publisher, and I'm trying to get Jeff to do a book on his jazz photos too, because he's got so many jazz people and other people. I mean, he's going through his negatives. He's got photos of Earth, Wind, and Fire, the Police.
Right. Just photos in general of famous people. He's got, incredible catalog, and it really has to be preserved. And there are people there will always be new generations and new people who are going to discover this stuff.
Now, one thing we didn't talk about, Andrew, one thing Dave did, and he talked to Curtis and I about it, he went down to the Chicago Music Exchange and got to play one of the Greenie guitars, the Murphy Gibson guitars.
Yeah.
Which one? Because there's 4 of them now.
Well, no, the first reissue for the ones that go for 85,000.
The 50K.
Yeah.
The 50K ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Chicago Music Exchange had 2 of them, and I think one of them was sold or selling for 85 grand.
Yeah, nuts.
Right.
Nice.
So, yeah. So he got
I asked him, what did you think of the guitar? He goes, not for a working musician.
Well, it's pretty expensive, right?
Right.
That's the deal. Yeah. But yeah, he got to play. They don't just let anyone play those things too. So, he had the connections because he's Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Curtis got to play the real McCoy.
Right. But I didn't have to pay $50,000 to play it.
That's right.
I just read recently somewhere, I forget who it was. I should know. Maybe you guys have heard it. But it's a big name. A gun has said that they've seen the Epiphone version of the Greenie, which is the lowest model that Gibson can ever bring out, and apparently that's pretty good too.
I haven't heard that. Have you, Curtis?
I've heard that, and I'm trying to remember who that was. Who was talking about that? Who said that? And I can't remember.
It was, and I remember thinking, oh, okay. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because so they've got the 50K one, then they came out with the 20K one. Now they've got the 10K one. Now they've got the 1K one. Clever
That's crazy.
marketing.
Yep, exactly what it is, right?
Right.
Exactly what it is. So when you were off there, one of the things that might happen here, Jeff and I are going to be interviewed by this gentleman from Rochester, New York, who is part of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame there, and we actually might go there to speak.
Oh, brilliant.
So one of the first things he asked us is what Paul Hamer has asked us to do. He goes, "When are you guys going on tour?"
Wow.
So we're going to have to get T-shirts like you got. 5150 show. We have to get tour T-shirts.
Well, it's kind of funny because when you do a one-off show, okay, and you get everyone to agree to do it, but then when you say, "Hey, we should do more," it gets almost impossible to get everybody together again because people are in all sorts of different bands and they're here, they're all over the country, you're doing different things. So it's really tough to repeat something like that. The best way to do it would be right then when you're rehearsed. If we had done 4 or 5 shows over a couple of weeks, it would have gotten better and better. But it's just, it's very tough to do, to put everyone together. I think Bob did an amazing job, and everyone, in pulling everybody together and getting everyone to agree to do this. So that's the tough thing. I said I'd play anytime, anywhere. I don't need any money, so I would just. But you have to convince everyone else.
Plus, we pulled Curtis. That was the first time Curtis's wife has ever seen him play live.
Right. Really?
Right, because I haven't been been live playing in a band in years. I've been working. I've been working.
Yeah.
So I kind of gave up the playing, performing.
Was that the first time Peggy saw you live?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and you think how weird that is. That's the first time I played again with Chris Herman since like 1980. So we hadn't even played together in over 40 years, and we just got together and rehearsed some songs. We could have. So that's the shame, is that we didn't have a bunch more gigs right after that, because it was definitely fun.
It was a launch for the book, and so
right.
Mission was accomplished.
But it gets really tough to repeat that sort of thing because even venues, they're booked months and months in advance, maybe a year in advance, and to get everyone on the same page, it's just it's a big effort.
And that's very true now, and that, like Dave was alluding to too, and I'm sure that's true over there too, Andrew, that so many places, well, a lot of places closed, never to be reopened, but
sure,
that people are playing live now, and you're right, getting a date at a venue that's still open, it's pretty tough because people are going out to see music again, which is a great thing, but getting dates, I mean, the places that are still open are really booked up.
Right, and even to get the musicians together, because I said I told you I went to see John Katke, brother John Katke, a couple weeks ago. He was playing in my town. He does one of the gigs he does is the Blues Brothers tribute, and he's the keyboard player, and he's booked. If you look at his itinerary, he's booked. I mean, for months. He's playing almost every night, either solo or different jam sessions or different bands. So you'd have to say, okay, Brother John, you available like November 1st? Well, let me check my schedule. Okay, okay, there's one guy. Now you got to try and find 6 other people and see if they can do it. And same with Dave Specter. These guys are all busy. They're all, professional touring musicians. So,
how does Dave? Sorry, Bob.
No, go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
How would Dave organise his gigs? Is he managed by a management team, or is he doing that himself? Is that something that he has a lot of control over? Do you guys know that?
I do not know that.
I think it's a little of both. I'm not sure, but he is with a record label.
Oh, okay.
So I would assume the Blues Fest was through his label. So and plus he is part owner of an establishment that has concerts too, but he doesn't like to play there, but 2-3 times a year to overextend himself. So I think it's a combination, Andrew.
Okay. Yeah, I always find these, the logistics and the organising of these things that we take for granted. Okay, the artist is there, Bob and Curtis there in front of us, but you don't realise that there's, a lot of, planning that goes through. So obviously, the question that I was going to ask when he was here, but, time, so I'll ask you guys. So obviously, the local businesses in Chicago sponsoring this festival brings in a lot of people, so it helps the local businesses. So it's a good thing. Everybody wins. People get free, top of the range music. The local businesses, the bars are full. The burger bars, the restaurants, the hotels. Yeah.
And you've got all these clubs in Chicago. Buddy Guys, Legends, all these different places, venues, which also have things going on during this festival. So the people will come into town, stay at hotels, and they can go out after this festival in the evening, say it's over. Maybe they end at 9-10 o'clock, but then you could go to any number of venues in Chicago, blues clubs, that you could go see music till 3 a.m. So it's a huge thing. Like Dave was saying, it's the biggest blues festival in the country.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I promise I'm going to do this. I'm going to spend the next couple of weeks devouring. I've listened to Dave's music, in preparation for the show. Don't get me wrong. It's what we do. But I'm going to devour his music a little bit more, so that when we get him on again in future, Bob, just to sort of dig a little bit deeper, because again, Curtis and Bob, I'm intrigued by this idea that people realise early in life that playing this kind of music is their call, and this is something that Dave recognised, this is what he's going to do, and then he went out and played with Herbert Sumlin and all these legends. It's just like
with everybody,
everybody. Yeah. So these guys just don't have a one-trick pony playing with them, do they?
No,
not at all.
No, and Dave is a super nice guy too. And I can't thank him enough.
Actually, and Bob, that's true. I mean, and very accessible, very nice, accessible for a guy who's like the real deal, who's been doing this for over 30 years as a recording artist and played with everybody, all over the world. And yet you can sit there and bring him on this show. We go out and have lunch with him or, dinner, and he's just the nicest guy. He's not acting like, some big rock star who's been doing this, for a while. It's just, it's almost like a different mentality with these blues guys,
Well, Curtis, you and I have had the opportunity to meet a lot of famous musicians.
Yeah.
And some of the musicians you think, oh, he's going to be a total jerk.
Yeah.
And you find out opposite. I mean, there's a friend of ours, Steve Summers, who did, he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I did sound for a long time for REO Speedwagon. And I went, ooh, he goes, I know, I hated them too, but they're really nice guys. So, and then when you meet some people that you're very standoffish from, you find out that they're the nicest guys.
Right.
Just like back when we met Alan Holdsworth when he was playing with Tony Williams, Eddie Van Halen goes, do you have a record player that has a 16 RPM? Because I can't figure out what he's doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and he was just a nice guy. He was just a guy.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Dave doesn't come off with any like big ego. He's just, he's down to earth. He's a professional. And yet you can just go out and talk to him, and it's just a normal guy. It's like talking us right here, So
would he mind if we promoted him here on the channel? His channel links and his music? Would
No,
he have-
absolutely. Please do.
Can you let him know, Bob, that we'll do that if that's because
Yeah, absolutely, I will.
the
I
the real
will.
deal is few and far between. If you understand what I mean,
That's
Yeah.
why I wanted to get him on with you, Andrew.
yeah.
And next time, let's make sure Simon and Brad are on too, because I think they'd have a great conversation with him.
Well, I sent the Rock Professor the link. He said that he was going to pop on and say hi. So, but he didn't. So, but it's a
He
work.
sent me an instant message saying he had a gig this evening and he was exhausted.
Okay. Yeah. So, no. These old guys. Hey, yeah,
Words right out of my mouth.
yeah. This
Right.
this is what he gets up to. I'm going to drop us out, and I'm going to put the back. This is what the Rock Professor gets up to after his gigs. Hold on. Yeah, he's still doing it. Cocaine and hookers.
You gotta do what you're good at.
Oh yeah. We had it's a bit of a laugh on the channel. We were talking one day about things as you do when you get old and stuff like that, and and Brad and I said, oh, we went to sleep early or something. We did a show or something like that, and I was tired and I went to sleep. And he goes, here, you young guys go to sleep. Here's me, cocaine and hookers, as a joke, and so we've just taken it as like a bit of an in-house.
What's that Robin Williams used to say? Cocaine, impotent and paranoid. Give me some of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's God's way of saying you're making too much money.
Right.
In fact, I think we've even put the video up. There's a video on the channel of him saying that.
I'll have to check that out. Check that
You know,
out.
the thing I'm disappointed that I wish that the Blues Festival, I just wish that it were somehow, it's a free thing, but that it were streamed or something, that they would go live and send that all, because why not? I don't understand the politics. Who knows? Maybe contracts.
If it's free, why wouldn't
right.
they stream it?
But
Right.
who knows if there's, contract, different people, different bands have rules, and I have no idea. But that's a shame, because this should be a live streamed all over the world festival too, because you're still going to get the people in Chicago. It's a huge, beautiful thing on the lakefront, and people are going to be there. But it's a shame that other people can't do that. And I don't know why, but who knows? Perhaps Michael Freeman one of these days, will ask him about that.
Yeah.
Seeing as how
I'm sure there's a lot of politics involved in that.
Yeah, right. Maybe some people wouldn't want things to be streamed or whatever, but that would be, that's too bad, because Andrew, you would love this stuff. There's a number of bands. I mean, there's got to be over 100 bands performing.
Oh, easy,
It's just easy, maybe. So,
I
that's
see
the
a
only
question about my poster. That was my nickname given to me in high school, because my name's Bob Schaffner, Bosch.
Bosch.
So that's my nickname. But while my wife was in Germany with doing work with Lily Lana Wachowski, I was there for the last week she was there, and they had a live interaction Bosch event there. And if anybody knows anything about Hieronymus Bosch, most of his paintings were destroyed. I think there's only 17 left in the whole world.
Wow.
So that poster's from Berlin, Germany. And the dates were closed, but we went into this little cul-de-sac and they said, oh no, it's still open. So it was really cool. But that was my nickname in high school. Bosch.
Okay, that's a cool name.
Thanks.
It's interesting about the acts, Curtis, that you're talking about at this festival. This is a question for you guys. How many new acts have gone to this festival and have become, and it's been their breakthrough gig? Do you guys know of any acts that have done that?
Boy, I don't know, but I'm sure there are tons.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sure
Always
there
have
are.
all sorts of newer, younger, and established, superstars. They have everything.
And
With the three
emerging
different
stars. I mean,
stages.
a
Right.
couple years back, I saw Riata Giddens there.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
So there's
That
quite a diverse.
That would be interesting to go look at the lineups over the years and answer that very question. I have a feeling that's another one that Michael Freeman could really answer.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
We'll have to get him back on too, Andrew.
Oh, fantastic.
but I'm
So,
going to see. I'm going to see him too. I'm going to see him Friday. I'll ask him that on Friday. I'll say, I have a question for you, because he has to be there for the whole over the whole length of this festival. So I'll see him on Friday. When we
so
watch Dave.
that's what that poster's about. So hope
Yeah.
that answers the question.
Bosch.
Chris Herman gave me that name, Curtis.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
Clever.
Because I was accepted to the Art Institute after high school, but decided to go overseas with a band
Good choice.
with another guy that Curtis used to play with who unfortunately is no longer with us. He's a great bass
okay.
player, Mike.
Oh, okay.
The other thing I wanted to say with Dave on, just as a sideline, Jeremy Spencer played at Space, and Dave Specter backed him up.
Oh, really?
And you should have seen. Dave's like, you should have seen the pictures. Jeremy Spencer's like, you're too damn tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Jeremy Spencer's 5'2" and Dave's 6'4".
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's actually how I met Jeff Lowenthal, was at a Jeremy Spencer concert.
Oh, wow.
It was at Fitzgerald's, Curtis. It was the south side of Chicago, and Jeff was there with Paul Hamer. And Paul said, I want you to introduce you to a friend of mine who's a huge Peter Green fan. And that's how I met Jeff.
I might cause a bit of controversy here, but again, it's my own opinion, and I don't want to upset anybody, including the co-hosts here with me and anyone watching. But Jeremy Spencer's contribution to this gig that they did just before COVID, his contribution to this gig is one of the best.
I agree.
One of the best sets. It's just phenomenal.
I agree. You know what's one of the best parts of that? If you look at the video, the film, when Jeremy comes out on stage, his facial reaction to the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's just blown away about it. I really regret not getting him on our book, because I think at the chess sessions, he was in seventh heaven. He was playing with one of his heroes.
Oh,
So what happened there? You couldn't get in touch with him, or he wasn't
No,
available?
Mike Verdon couldn't get in touch with him either.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, if he can't get in touch with the guy, what chance do I have?
Right.
sure.
Right.
Sure.
So, but I know Richard Orlando finally gotten in touch with Jeremy for his book by saying he didn't want to talk about Peter Green at all, just about Jeremy. And I think Richard said his response was that he was greened out. So, but I wanted to talk to him about JT Brown in this session, because I think at Fleetwood Mac in Chicago, Jeremy Spencer was just in heaven. He's playing with one of his idols.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's on YouTube there's about 4 or 5 short little videos of Jeremy Spencer talking about his idols, how he got involved and interested in playing slide, and he's got some slide lessons there and also some tone lessons. Just wonderful little videos that we've attached to our Facebook group, and a lot of people hadn't seen these things. And what's really interesting is that Elmore James, and he's talking about this, and I love this, Bob. I love this, Curtis, how these English guys, I have to say English guys, but how they were listening to these albums, and this is when Jeremy was a nobody, and then worked out how to tune his guitar in open E, Curtis, without YouTube.
Right.
using a record
Mm-hmm.
to do it, and
Yeah.
and working out how to play these famous Elmore slide riffs by his ear.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting
Phenomenal.
when because most of us old guys, that's how we learned is just by
Yeah.
ear. We didn't have YouTube and this and that and
Yeah.
tab. We had a record player and
Yeah.
that's so you had to develop your ear. You either watched someone play and tried to figure it out, or you listened to the records and you developed your ear. So when I started playing slide, I had no idea that Dwayne Allman was playing an open E. So I just tuned it what I liked the sound, and it was open D, A D F sharp A D,
That's pretty close.
and so right. But it's only a step difference. But on a guitar, but I didn't know that, so I played everything and played all the Allman Brothers songs and everything in open D, and it was fine. And it wasn't until later when I found out, wait a second, what do you mean he's playing an E? I didn't know that. Oh crap. Okay. So now I have to tune to open E, and that was the magic though. What a difference.
Yeah.
The sound, the tension of the string to be an E was like, oh, that's it. That's Dwayne Allman. There it is. And he's playing through JBLs and Altic Lansings speakers, and there's that sound. And okay, that's what he's doing. But anyway, I always just played in open D, and it worked out great. And I have recordings from way back then, and you wouldn't know the difference. But
well, I'm glad that you mentioned Dwayne Allman, because I'm a Dwayne Allman nut. I got this SG. And I'm gonna talk some gear with you guys, because we love talking gear shit here. So I'm gonna tell you something. So I got this and I set it up permanently in open E, and I raise and I've been playing slide for a little while. So I normally raise the bridge, Curtis and Bob, because you got to lift it off the neck, to play. And a good friend of mine, I was explaining it to a good friend of mine, and my friend said, why don't you just adjust the truss rod and put a bow in it? And I'd never done that. And I said, oh, okay. So I wound the bridge down, and I tightened up the neck so that I got and I got to tell you, that little difference, Curtis, so it's remarkable. The strings are close to the neck, but you still got distance, as opposed to having just the bloody bridge wound up.
Right.
Do you know?
Right.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
I never did that and put the underbow on anything, because I was also playing regular guitar on the same thing. I didn't have multiple guitars. The Les Paul I was playing at the time, so I had to just raise up the bridge. And I was also scared way back then to put an underbow in the neck, that it might not come back to true the way I wanted it. So I didn't like to mess around with that too much. And then what happened is, after a while, I said, well, this is getting hard to do with one guitar or two guitars. That's when I discovered lap steel. When I met Paul Hamer and went into Northern Prairie. And so I got an old Supro lap steel from him. And then I got eventually a Gibson Ultratone, from the 50s, which is just like a gold top. It's gold finish. It's got the same knobs. It's got the same P90 pickup. Everything about it, mahogany body. It's like a gold top from the 50s. They just turned it into a lap steel. It's hilarious. But so I have a Rickenbacker lap steel too. So that's how it saved it for me. Then I would just play those for all the slide things. I had it on a stand, and I'd play all the guitar parts with the guitar around my neck, so I could just switch back and forth, two different amplifiers, and just do it like that. That's what I would do.
Isn't your Rickenbacker?
What's that?
No, Bob, you asked the question, Bob.
I was going to say, isn't it a Rickenhamer? Not a Rickenbacker.
Rickenhamer. Yeah.
Well, I've never gotten rid of the lap. I still have all those lap steels that I bought way back then in the 70s.
Oh, phenomenal. Yeah, slide. And, we were talking about it earlier, folks, when Dave was on, about Mick Taylor and, his contribution to the Stones playing slide. It was just hearing that, Bob, when you're just a young guy discovering this music, and you know, you again, I mean this respectfully, you know, you guys would have been listening to it pretty much when these albums were dropped, you know, and it was like,
Oh yeah.
holy
Well-
shit, what's going on here?
Well, that was my reaction when I first heard the Allman Brothers, and then I think my brother had was it Idlewild South, or maybe it was the first record, I can't remember, but
There
he
you go.
had, well, yeah, the Live at the Fillmore, of course, but he had all those in the first time, you know, and he was older than me, and he put that on, and I heard, you know, put it right onto his Statesboro Blues, and I said,
Oh.
what is going on? What is that sound? How's he doing? Is that a harmonica? Because he's actually trying to sound like a harmonica.
Yeah.
And it was no, that slide. I said, what do you mean? What slide? And that was it. I was hooked from that day on, you know.
Yeah.
I just had to have that sound. In fact, when I went to college, I took all my gear down to Indiana, where I went to school, and in the basement we built a studio. And I remember it was a fraternity, and I had my lap steel down there, and I was jamming with a couple of people that I knew. And one of the guys from the fraternity comes running down into the basement. He's like, "It sounds exactly like Duane Allman. What is that? What do you guys?" It's like, well, yeah, here's an old Fender amp. I'm playing a lap steel, and I'm open tuned, and yeah, because we played all the Allman Brothers stuff back then. So he just couldn't believe it. It was fun. Wow. It was a good compliment too, that it sounded like it.
Yeah.
No kidding.
There's a lot of little tricks that you can pick up. You know, when I first started playing slide, Curtis and Bob, I always played with a metal slide on my little pinky, and then and that's going to get you so far. But if you want to get close, and again, this is something that we like to share with folks, our own experiences. If you want to get a little bit closer to that Allman style slide, you've got to use a glass slide, and it's got to be on this finger here.
Glass
Gotta
slide,
be.
and then a glass Coracedon bottle.
It's got. If you want to get that vibrato, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it with a metal slide.
Oh no, the metal doesn't work. Right?
No,
you have to. But that's what Duane was always using, the Coracedon, the glass Coracedon bottles, and. Of course, I went out and got one of those right away, and other glass slides, and so that's how I was doing it too. And what a difference in sound! The
night and day.
The metal ones work great with the lap steels.
Sure.
So that's a different thing, but
or you could do what John Lennon did and Get Back. You know, pick up a big cigarette lighter.
Whatever whatever you have slide. At the time. Yeah.
Well, you don't often think of Lennon playing slide as like great slide players, do you, Bob? But
no.
Oh my god!
Very true.
And don't you go to that record cover, whatever you do. No, we're not having a conversation about that record cover.
Right. Well, have you ever seen, Andrew, all the other photos from the photo session for Live at Fillmore East?
I've seen a few. I just, it's
well, there's other. The one they used was a really funny thing because he had just gotten, someone gave I think Duane a couple of joints or something. They were all laughing about it. But then there's another one where they're all giving everyone the finger. It's hilarious.
So it's quite funny because he's sitting on a stash in between Dave's.
Right.
Yeah. Because the guy, their friend goes walking past and that's why they've got that big smile, and it's like, Bob, isn't that rock and roll?
Things like that happen vicariously, just like the last album that Keith Moon was on with the Who, Who's Next. He's sitting in a chair that says, "Not to be taken away."
Wow.
Like, holy crap. Because he died, several weeks after that album was released.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, spooky stuff. And I defy any drummer to try to copy Keith Moon. The guy never kept a beat.
Interesting musician. Certainly fitted into that band because of his personality. It was definitely personality and that rambunctious, boisterous thing that they needed. that was the catalyst for that band, certainly, wasn't it? It wasn't because of he was certainly no John Bonham or Ginger
No.
Baker.
True. And I just saw one of my favorite drummers, Stuart Copeland, with an orchestra. He did the Police songs, Deranged. He said that was his revenge to Sting. Some of the songs you couldn't even recognize, and he did not the hits. I mean, he did Murder by Numbers. I mean, that's a B-side.
Yeah.
But he was
He's he hasn't got a lot of love for Sting, has he?
No, I met Sting once. I think he didn't like me because I called him Gordon. But that's his name. No, Stuart Copeland said that as long as they're not on stage, they're fine together.
Right. As long as we don't ever play together, we're good.
Right.
But it also, again, I'm not going to pretend to be a police expert, but, you know, it goes back to that creative differences that they had back when they were dominating the world with their albums, and also Stuart's contribution, because, you know, we all know that he was a jazz drummer trained in music, a little bit more, a little bit more sophisticated in his musical ability compared to Sting. And I think also royalties became part of the problem too, and yeah.
He fantastic drummer. He had a full orchestra. I mean, oboes, cellos, a harp player, a percussionist, 3 singers. It was fantastic. And his drums were far stage right. And I actually went with Chris Herman, and I saw that there was a Marshall and a Strat. And I said, if he picks up the guitar, we're leaving.
Yeah.
But he did, right?
He did. He played guitar in one song.
Yeah, right.
But he didn't sing, so that was a bonus.
He's a from what I understand, he's a musical prodigy. You know, the guy, you know, he was proficient in music at an early age, and I think that was one of the things that we didn't work out until later on, that him and the guitar player in the Police,
Andy.
Who's the Andy Summer, who's a little bit older than them, and because he played with the blues bands, as we know. Yep. So again, another musical genius. So they were kind of providing that foundation that Sting kind of said that he was what's the word, the genesis of. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of pinching a little bit of where these other two guys were pushing the band.
It's interesting because
Stuart Copeland has been writing soundtracks for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was always drawn to Stuart's drumming in the Police. To me, that was the most important part of that band. Obviously,
I agree.
Sting was, writing all these things and singing and all this and that. But I just always was fascinated just listening to the grooves in the background, especially on their live recordings. I have some bootlegs from the late 70s, and just listening to Stuart Copeland play. And even at one part, Sting at one part, while Stuart's doing this groove in the background, he goes, "Oh, that's great. That's great, Stu." I mean, so you can tell even Sting loved it, even though he kind of dominated. But I was always drawn to his drumming behind it. It was kind of like, Bob with Cheap Trick. I always liked Buddy Carlos's drumming.
Mm-hmm.
I always was fascinated with him in the background. And so,
Interesting you should say that, because when I was a young cat and I heard Roxanne, I heard that on the radio and I thought, that was great. It wasn't until Walking on the Moon,
right,
as a single came, and then you heard that drumming that you're talking about, Curtis, which was in the early 1980s, like 80, 81, that wasn't normal stuff on popular radio, and it was like, wow.
Yep.
Yeah, he's an incredible drummer. And Hamer made some guitars for the Police. If you look at their video of da-da-da-da-da, they're playing Hamer guitars.
Yep. We did a lot of things for them, all sorts of crazy stuff like we did for everybody. But yeah, they were fun, except it was such a circus. It was okay when they came into our shop, because then everything was calm. Andy could just sit down and work with Joel designing something or whatever. But to go to their shows, it was, it was always a circus. Sting was just a maniac running around, acting crazy, and always on and performing basically, even backstage for everybody. But
Yeah.
so anyway, I'm sure that was part of the issue too.
You read the biographies, and
Yeah.
you can see some of the footage too when they're traveling, and they're, Sting is punching the other guy. They're fighting.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
And it's like, are these guys? And it's not bullshit. It's not like how Curtis would have a couple of scotches and then have a bit of a rough and tumble with Bob. No,
Not again.
it was nothing. It's like, it kind of freaked me out.
I'm coming for you, Bob. Where are you? There you are.
Yes, Sting's a, I think he's mellow. Well, I think they deliberately, when the band and he came out with his solo albums, I think he deliberately worked on his reputation, Bob. I think his management,
so,
as this kind of calm kind of dude,
Right.
Yeah, I think so too. But I agree with Curtis. I think the best part of of course, I'm a drummer, so.
Okay.
Well, I started out
part
as a
of the piece
drummer,
was-
so that's part of my thing too. You
Okay.
probably didn't even know that, Bob. I started out as a drummer in 1965.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. You know why? Because there were these guys who were older than me, a few years older than me, had this little band in our town. Just everyone was terrible. They didn't know what they were doing. The only thing we could play was like Gloria, but then I could play Wipeout on the drums. And
There
so
you go. You're in.
So there were, seriously. So me and this other guy who was like 3 years older, it was like between him and me. And they said, well, whoever gets a drum set first, you're in the band. And I went to my dad and said, I've got to get a drum set because I can be in this band. And, so that's how I started. So my dad, we went out, he got me this really nice Ludwig set.
Oh.
And
Why do you think everybody came to my house to practice? Because I was the drummer.
But I started with that and then went on to other instruments. So.
And the drummer gets it all from every amp because you're in the middle of it all.
Yeah. Right.
Thank God I always wore earplugs.
So who were you listening to, Curtis, in 1965? Who was inspiring you as a drummer?
Well, I wasn't getting inspired as a drummer because you have to remember I was only 10 years old.
Oh, okay.
But I remember I got Meet the Beatles when it came out. I was listening to Dave Clark 5, all the
all these English cats.
Yeah, all that. Who else? Well, obviously Beach Boys. And oh God, who were some of these other ones I always used to listen to? Anyway, whoever was big at the time on the radio, because all we had was AM radio. We could listen to that.
Did you?
But I always was drawn to the drumming.
Have you gotten the new Tim Finn CD?
No, I haven't. Is it worth checking out?
It is worth checking out. It's better than the first thing he did with that guy.
Okay. No, I'll check him out. To be honest, guys, I mean this respectfully. I don't listen to a lot of contemporary music unless Bob or Curtis tells me, go and check this guy out. I don't actively keep in that contemporary realm unless like for example, I've got Allman Brothers saved as a like on Spotify. So if there's a new album that comes out or a re-release of so that's how I'm going to be alerted.
Oh, gotcha.
But unless you someone refers me to an artist, I ain't going to be listening to it, Bob. So, but I'll check it out. Thank you.
Check it out.
I'm the same way because I really don't listen to very, very few contemporary artists.
And the only reason why I'm not doing it's not because, modern music sucks, and, clearly it does. But the only reason why I'm not doing it,
but it's not
Bob,
because of that. Yeah. Right.
No, it's because, I've got so much of this good classic music, that we love, so many albums, that I haven't even heard that, going back to these 30s blues guys, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, you know, there's just, the list is endless.
Right.
Just remember, it doesn't have to be good to be a classic.
Yeah. Good point.
It's true. Just remember the Trogs. I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah, good point. Or Herman's Hermit.
Yes.
Herman. Oh,
He's
my
still,
God.
He's still touring over here.
I singing the one song.
Right.
That's what people say about the Jefferson Airplane. You know, Grace Slick built a career on one song.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Right.
which one? White Rabbit?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
That's
It's
the
a
one.
classic. Yeah. As much as we
while
hate
we're talking
it, we
about
love
Grace Slick, can I ask you guys a question? So she
Sure.
didn't want to be interviewed. A couple of years ago, they came out with Janis Joplin documentary. You know, the definitive one, which is good. You know, I'm glad that, you know, producers and directors are doing this, guys. But I do remember reading that the director of the film was pissed off that Grace Slick didn't want to be interviewed. And I remember the director saying, well, okay, we won't have your face then. If you don't want to be on the screen, can we have your voice? And even then she said, so why would someone like that, who was at a defining point in American and cultural and rock and roll history, 68, 69, one of the outstanding woman icons, Grace Slick, not contributed discussion on appeared Janis Joplin?
The only thing that comes to mind is a 3-letter word: ego.
Yeah, could be.
That's the only reason I could think of.
Yeah.
Or some sort of conflict with that other person. You don't want to talk about, you know, competition.
Shit, that was 40 years ago, though, Bob.
People hold grudges a long time.
Oh, man.
50 years ago.
Oh, God.
Dating ourselves. No,
yeah,
you know,
Just remember Jefferson Airplane. Just remember they were playing Woodstock, so you know.
Yeah, well,
you know,
that's
and a
the
lot
point.
of,
yeah.
To your point, Andrew. But a lot of, you know, we're talking about angst with the Police. Some of the best music, you know, Peter Gabriel's most popular album was when he was going through his divorce. So
Correct.
Yeah.
Roxy Music.
Correct.
You know, Egos Like This. Avalon.
Fleetwood Mac. Rumors.
Yeah, Fleetwood Mac. Yeah. I mean, it creates some of the greatest music. I mean, you know, just like the tension between Lennon and McCartney.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes way back.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
Hey, and now right up to our band. We can't get everyone to agree to get together again.
That's right. We're going to be
So who do we blame? Curtis. Who do you blame?
I think since Lowenthal's not here, we'll blame him since he had nothing to do with the jam.
I blame our sound man, Jeff Lowenthal.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
He's still. By the way, Curtis is still laughing at that when he was having problems with his audio, and you said that he's going to be the sound man for the event, Andrew.
Right. I liked it when like his camera fell down and turned on the side, and you know, that was one of the funniest moments. That was classic. Nothing against Jeff. It was fantastic video. It's amazing. Go back and watch that. You'll just funniest thing of all time. And then when he would hold up I know.
It's hilarious.
It's absolutely brilliant, is what it is. Yes, it's just so.
What Curtis? Wait till Andrew and the group. The first time I brought Jeff to meet you, and he climbed in your car.
Oh, right.
What was happening to Jeff at the time he was climbing in your car?
Oh, well, he had, for some reason, he had cut his finger. I don't know. He was doing something outside. And so we go to get him and get in the car, and he walked to the car and his hands are bleeding. His thumb, I'm like, Jeff, are you okay? Oh, I'm fine. I'm just trying to stop the bleeding here. I cut my thumb or something. And he's bleeding all over in the car. I'm like, well, all right, do we have some Band-Aids here? And we're we're fixing him up, and he's bleeding off. But it was hilarious. It was really funny because he didn't know what he did, and I'm like, "Are you sure you're okay? Is everything great here?" And I'm putting Band-Aids all over his thumb, and and then we went out to lunch or do something else. And it was, but hilarious. It's always an adventure with Jeff. He's so much fun. I love the guy. He's a riot.
He's a pretty spry 85-year-old, isn't he?
Yeah, he's so funny. He's great. Spectacular.
We should dedicate this show to him then, Jeff. And we hope that you get better and well.
Yes.
If you've gone 2 hours and 5 minutes watching these rat bags, you got to the good part of the show. We were talking about you.
Well, the best, absolutely the best laugh I've seen on any of your shows ever, Andrew. It was so good. Just classic. Brilliant.
We've got to get him back on, guys. It's been a pleasure, obviously, Curtis, hanging out with you and being in touch with you on social media. So, folks, as I say, Bob's going to send me all of Dave's links and his links, and I'm going to attach them to this video along with Curtis's. Go out and subscribe and share and like and hit Bob up and Curtis up on Facebook. Friend them, hang out with them, and keep in touch directly with what they're doing. It's a fantastic community that we've got. We're not experts. Bob is, Jeff is, Curtis is, it's been a pleasure getting Dave on. Would love to get Dave back, Bob. And if you can let him know.
I'm also trying to get Curtis's old boss on for you, too.
Fantastic. If you can let Dave know that we'll do everything that we can to publicise his music and his website too on our channel, because he's the real deal.
I'll try. Hey, by the way, I'll try and get you. I'll give you guys a little update when I go Friday to see him perform with the Delmark All Stars, and if I can shoot some video. But I'm not sure. We'll see how that goes. I'm not sure if they're going to allow it or if they want anything. I never know. But if I can
be careful with that, Curtis.
I know, because you never know.
Yeah. Well, if you can shoot something and get away with it, and you want it, if we're allowed to put it up, we will.
If we aren't.
Yeah.
And I'll get you those links, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Yes.
No problem. So we should come back anyway. The three of us, at least, we should, and Curtis can give us a little update on the gig. Maybe maybe we should plan something in a couple of weeks where we just jump on and, because it might just be a little bit easier for the 3 or 4 of us, or maybe the Rock Professor, just to get on, and then you could give us a debrief, Curtis. Maybe.
Sure. Because there's so much going on at this festival. I'll be walking around. My wife and I are going to walk around and check out some of the other things, and so we'll give you a little update on how it went or whatever.
Cool. Yeah. And Bob, we never have anything. We never run out of things to talk about, do we?
No, we don't.
There's always going to be something.
When you were a small little channel with only a couple hundred people listening.
Yeah.
So congratulations on your success.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, we try to keep it the same as we always have, We don't ask for money on this channel like a lot of other channels do. We do have people that subscribe to the channel that helps, pay for the StreamYards link. But I'll be honest with you guys, it's not about a money-making venture for us. It's just about getting together. And I've said this to you guys before. It's like a gig for us. It's like a gig,
right.
Getting on and sharing and being part of this great community and growing organically. Helping you, Bob, with your book and growing in conjunction with your book has been a remarkable experience for us all, and again, that's what we want to do. We want to just be there and just work like that. It's what Simon wants to do. It's what Brad wants to do. We're not sponsored by anybody. We're just fans hanging out.
And that's why you've grown, because people see and appreciate that.
I'll tell you one little thing that a friend of mine told me that's associated with the channel, and they do a weekly show on a band. and he was telling me off air. He said it's really, really difficult for us to find content to talk about this band weekly because you're getting to a point where you're repeating yourself. And I said that's exactly why we don't talk about a band weekly, because it puts too much pressure on you and your co-hosts to come up with content. The great thing for us, Bob and Curtis, that we have on our channel, the fortunate thing is that every week we're ranking the tracks of a different band.
Right. Yep.
So there's no pressure on us to come out with new content or a new story or to go dig in, and you understand what I mean? So we're just talking about Fleetwood Mac Shrine this week. Okay, so what was Fleetwood Mac doing in '68, and then go through the tracks and talk about, so from that point of view, we don't have the pressure of talking about the same band weekly. And you could just imagine talking about the same band weekly. My gosh, it'll do your head in.
Yeah, right.
Impossible. Right.
Definitely.
Well, you guys do a great job. You do a fantastic job, and it's just a wonderful channel. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And you guys are always have a permanent invitation to join us. If you guys ever want to rank a track with us, if you have any projects, Curtis, if you've got a project that you want to promote and talk about, just flick me a message and we'll get together and we can do it. Same with you, Bob. I've said it to you many times. If there's anything that you guys are working on or associated with, take advantage of social media, of that organic social media, because all it's going to cost you is just your time.
Right.
That's where we got Dave on for you, Andrew.
And
appreciate it,
Andrew and Bob. I apologize. I came on kind of late. Had some technical issues there, and I wasn't sure exactly when it was starting and all that sort of thing. But and I was in the middle of dinner, but that's okay. So everything's cool. But I'm glad I could join in.
Yeah, thanks,
again,
Curtis.
it's one of the great things about the show that we're organic. That's it. People pop on and pop off.
Right.
Easy.
Fantastic.
All right.
Thank you, Andrew.
Everybody that's watched us live, Greg and Holly in particular, if you're watching on a replay, like I've said, there'll be some social media links attached to this video. Go and subscribe, reach out, let Curtis and Bob know that you've associated with them on social media through the channel here. They'll love that.
Absolutely.
We're out of here.
Thanks,
Bob,
Andrew.
Talk to you later, Bob.
Definitely.
Andrew, thanks again.
No problem. Rock and roll.